Getting to know cattle. Part 1. Cattle behavior. What makes a cow a cow? There are two different types of cattle that were domesticated by three separate processes nearly 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. Taurine cattle were domesticated in two separate events, once in Eurasia and once in Africa. Zebu cattle, those that have a hump at the shoulder, were domesticated in a third separate event. Cattle are social animals. Feral cattle separate into cow-calf groups and bull groups. In a natural environment, males are dominant over females. It is important to note that farmed cattle are arranged in social groups determined by humans. A cow's natural diet consists solely of plant materials. These animals are ruminants, and thus their stomach is divided into 4 compartments. In a grass pasture, cattle will graze for 6 to 10 hours a day. After a meal, cattle regurgitate a small portion of their partly digested food, rechew it, and then swallow it again. This allows for easier digestion. When allowed to operate on their natural diurnal rhythm, cattle will graze during the day and lie down at night. However, these animals are known to take hour-long rests during the day. Some factors that affect a cow's natural rhythm are weather, access to shade, and of course, human control. At about 9 months of age, female cattle have their first estrus cycle and are ready to breed. Of course, males are ready to breed at 2 months. That is, males begin to mount females at this age. However, they do not reach sexual maturity until 1 to 2 years. Males can detect a female in estrus by displaying the flamen response, which is pictured here. After a 9-month gestation period, pregnant cows will separate from the group to give birth. Only a few hours after birth, calves will suckle. In the weeks after birth, cows and calves communicate, often via quiet grunting and contact calls. This allows an important bond to develop as they learn to recognize one another. Before we finish with part 1, it is important to understand a little bit about a cow's vision. Cattle have wide-angle vision. That is, they have a vision field in excess of 300 degrees. Cattle do have depth perception, but they struggle to perceive depth at ground level while they are walking or moving forward with their heads held up. In order to see depth on the ground, they would have to stop moving and lower their heads. Cattle conundrum, fight or flight. Now we're going to talk about cattle in their human-created environments. Handling cattle that have the propensity to become nervous, stressed, and afraid often lead to many of the problems faced in the cattle industry. Animals in these conditions are dangerous to themselves, humans, other animals, and property. When afraid or excited, cattle may become confrontational by rearing, bucking, kicking, charging, headbutting, or stomping. Additionally, cattle may balk and refuse to move through the areas of the facility. This often leads to the handlers using physical force to attempt to push or pull the cattle through. More extreme methods involve prodding, hitting, or making abrupt, loud noises to frighten the animal into moving. These practices create a stressful environment and subpar living conditions. Having to deal with cattle that are nervous, flighty, or excitable can lead to injuries like the man in the photo who was knocked down by a bucking cow. When behaving this way, cattle can inflict serious injury that can be fatal. Handling difficult cattle wastes valuable time and lowers productivity, while animals who endure frequent stress produce lower quality meat and dairy. These problems originate in the lack of understanding of the physiology, psychology, and genetics of the animal. This lack of understanding leads to poorly designed facilities, improper housing, and excessively rough handling. All of these factors cause fear, agitation, and stress, which is usually the root of behavioral issues. Additionally, breeding of animals with excited temperaments will transfer genetically to future generations. Temple Grandin's extensive research and insight about livestock behavior led to monumental changes in the handling of livestock, including cattle. Grandin recognized ways in which the facilities clashed with the cattle's natural tendencies and sensory mechanisms. She proceeded to design facilities and protocols that decrease stress levels in cattle, which improves the welfare of the animal and the productivity of the people. Due to the wide-angle vision that cattle possess, they are constantly exposed to a greater amount of visual stimuli. They also have limited depth perception. For these reasons, animal handlers must be aware of moving or flapping objects, uneven walking surfaces, chutes that allow visibility to outside distractions, and uneven light distribution. Resolving these facility issues will minimize stress and behaviors such as balking or bolting. It is also important that animal handlers are educated about cattle behavior and are trained to properly behave around or interact with cattle. For example, the concept of the flight zone describes the proximity that a human can approach an animal before it moves away. Understanding and utilizing the principle of the flight zone can keep animals calm and make working conditions safer. In conclusion, decreasing nervous, flighty, or excitable cattle behavior means improving facility design, selectively breeding for calmer cattle, and properly training animal handlers. This will decrease levels of stress in the cattle, therefore minimizing behavior problems. Furthermore, it increases productivity, meat and dairy quality, and the safety of the cattle and people.